I know a lot of you out there, you are curious about Japan, and if you haven't been to Japan, you think it's this awesome place, this great mecca. And somebody asked me a really good question. They said, you know, I feel like there's a lot of great things about Japan, but I'm thinking about visiting or moving to Japan, and I want to be realistic about it. Tell me some of the things that suck about Japan. And I started to make a list of things that suck about Japan. And as I went through that list, I realized that there were so many details to talk about each thing that I can't make one video about all the things that suck about Japan because, I want to talk a little more in depth about each thing. And today I'm going to talk about the food situation here in Japan. Even though Japanese food itself is great, I mean, it tastes so good. It's so healthy, and I really love it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the food situation here and why it sucks and why it sucks. One thing that's tough for Westerners, I think, is that Japanese food is very low calorie. For example, if you eat a bowl of ramen, if I eat a bowl of ramen, I feel like I just ate, one cracker or something. It doesn't really fill me up. Whereas my Japanese friend eats that same bowl of ramen, they're like, oh, I feel stuffed. So the calories in the food are really low, and that's hard to get used to physiologically, I think. I've been living here for 12 years now, and I think over this long time period, my appetite has decreased a little bit, and probably my stomach size has actually decreased because I've slowly gotten used to eating smaller quantities of food, and but still, I was still raised on an American diet, so there are times when I do feel really unsatisfied with the amount of calories I get per meal. And then another thing is, like, when you go out to a restaurant, you might pay. I'll talk in U.S. currency here. You might pay $15 or $20 or $30 for your dinner, but in your mind you're used to getting a lot, a big quantity if you pay that kind of price. But what you'll get is just like a few little cuts of meat, really, just thinly sliced, and a few little pieces of cabbage here, and it'll be really beautiful and nicely designed, but the quantity and the calories will be really low. There's been countless times where I've gone to a restaurant and I've put out a lot of money and just walked. I finished my meal just feeling more hungry than I was than when I came in, and even though the food was good, I just felt really frustrated and sad, actually, afterwards, because your body needs food. You need food to live, and how are you supposed to do that if you're spending all this money and you're only getting a little bit of food? It's just kind of frustrating sometimes. Okay, another thing is the sizing is different. If you go to a fast food restaurant or any restaurant, if you're coming from America, okay, how do I put this? America's small size, if you're talking about drinks, for example, America's small size is the same as Japan's large size. So you have to get used to that. And then Japan's small size is really, really tiny. All right, so the sizing is totally off here if you're coming from America, for example, or other Western country. Also, when you're shopping, it's hard to find a lot of foods that you may be used to. I made a list here. It's hard to find, for example, pinto beans, refried beans, tortillas, lasagna shells, buttermilk, never seen it, Swiss cheese, only can find in specialty stores, turkey, I've never seen it sold here, but I know you can find it. Decaffeinated coffee, hard to find. Cottage cheese, sour cream, a lot of dairy products here are really hard to find because dairy is not really a part of the traditional Japanese diet. Also, I've seen a lot of channels or gurus on YouTube that promote a fruitarian diet. That's somebody who only eats fruit. And I'm thinking, man, you would have to be like a millionaire to live on a fruit diet here in Japan, because fruit is really expensive here. For example, watermelons here cost about, a cheap watermelon costs about 2,000 yen. That's about 25 US dollars. And then a good watermelon will cost, it'll start at 4,000 yen, or about 50 US dollars. Mangoes, those run about 300, 400, 500 yen for one mango. That's about $5, $6 per mango. Papayas are expensive. Those cost about 4 US dollars, 5 US dollars per papaya. Apples, you pay about $1.30 per apple. Figs are really expensive. I mean, all fruit is expensive here. Strawberries, you can get a small box of strawberries. During the high season, you can get down to like the $3 US dollar range, but that's really cheap. But usually it costs about $6 US dollars, for a box of strawberries. So, I mean, because of that, I don't really eat a lot of fruit here. The cheapest fruit here is bananas. Most of the bananas are imported from the Philippines. And you usually pay about 100 yen, between 100 and 150 yen for a bunch of bananas, a small bunch of bananas. So again, I just want to emphasize that when you go to a restaurant, or even when you buy food in the supermarket, you're basically paying a high price for a low quantity. And that's something that has always been hard for me to mentally adapt to. I mean, I live here, I have to eat, so somehow I've just accepted it. But, I'm always looking for bargains. The best thing you can do is to find stores like actually we have Costco here in Japan, but you can only go to a Costco if you live in a major metropolitan area. If you live out in the countryside, you're screwed. And then there's another store called Gyomu Super that sells pretty. The food is pretty cheap there, and you can get larger quantities there. For other foreigners who live here in Japan, they probably know of other places where you can get food in like large quantities at lower prices. So to wrap things up, that's the kind of the sucky part of living in Japan in terms of food. But I just want to end it on a kind of a positive note and say that the quality of the food here is really high, and it's really good. If you go to a nice Japanese, mid-level price-wise, a mid-level Japanese restaurant or a high-level Japanese restaurant, it's going to be expensive, but the food is just superb. The taste is awesome. The quality of the meat here is really high. I did mention that fruit here is really expensive, but it's also almost always perfect. It's just very beautiful. There's no bruise marks on it. It looks very clean, very healthy, very organic. And that's the same with all the food, vegetables, everything they sell here in Japan. It's just very neatly organized, and it looks very healthy and clean and sanitary. Okay, so I hope that helps you understand some more about the food situation here in Japan.